You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Monday evening, folks. Welcome to my show. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over and see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. At the same time, you could be watching this broadcast in simulcast over on my video YouTube channel. There you go. Video YouTube channel. My YouTube channel with all my videos. And you can see about 230 more of these archived programs since I started broadcasting on Odyssey at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And come on over, join the live chat room, which is going on right now. Meet the other Intrepheads. We'll have a good night of it all together and all around. So it's been an exciting weekend with the Situation Room. Rocky Stucci and I hosted a live event at the Depot Bar and Grill down in Hastings, Minnesota. And we had a lot of people show up for that. We had our guest, Motherella, Dr. Michelle Piper. She is a psychic medium, and she did spot readings for people, about 30 of them. So it was a pretty fantastic event. And, of course, we had several gatherings where we had dignitaries or good friends coming in from out of state. We had Don Newen and his wife, Donna Fiducia, were here. Donna Fiducia, you may remember her from Fox News. She was once an anchor there 15 years ago or more. And so we had a good time all getting together, and that took up Friday evening and most of the day Saturday. And so if you missed out on the live broadcast, you can go to Rocky's YouTube page, that's Rocky Stucci Media, or on Facebook, Rocky Stucci Media, and you can check out the at least the archive of the live broadcast we did. So we had a good time this weekend. Hope your weekend was just as good. I also spent some time at home just working in the front yard, doing some landscaping. Minor as it was. I'm no professional landscaper, but put in a circle of stones and pavers and mulch and plants and things like that. And so I got my hands dirty. My fingernails are barely clean from that, but clean enough for radio. So tonight we're going to get back into, I don't know that we'll finish the story tonight, but we're talking about Hancock moving out from Fort Larned and meeting with Roman Nose and the other chiefs that were resisting him. And he's trying to show a very great show of force. And he's riding out from the fort, and he meets about halfway the Indians who were camped a few miles away, and has a parley with them. But he has no intention of parleying, no intention of really discussing the matters. He's there to impose the will of the United States government, as he was interpreting it while they're on the prairie. And their Fort Larned, if you want to know where this is all located right now historically, this is about 200 miles west and slightly south of Kansas City, is where Fort Larned was, in the middle of the Kansas wilderness. And so this is where this is taking place. And they rode out in the morning, and the news that the soldiers were coming stirred the Indian camp into action. And Roman Nose put on his officer's blouse because he knew it pissed off Hancock. So he had a U.S. military, the blue blouse or the blue coat with the epaulets on it, the gold epaulets. And he had a carbine in his dragoon scabbard, and he had 2 pistols in his belt. And he had little ammunition, so he added his bow and quiver. And at the last minute, he took along a truce flag. And he formed his force of 300 fighters into a line in front, extending a mile across the plain. And they were riding toward this meeting. And there were 1,400 soldiers coming. And so Roman Nose said this officer they call Hancock is spoiling for a fight. I'll kill him in front of his own men and give them something to fight about." Now, one of the other chiefs, Bull Bear, replied cautiously, pointing out that the soldiers outnumbered them almost 5-1. They were armed with fast-shooting rifles and big guns, and the soldiers' ponies were sleek and fat from grain, while the ponies their women and children were fleeing on in the other direction were weak after a winter without grass. If there was a fight, the soldiers could catch them and kill them all. And so in a few minutes they saw this column coming. Roman Nose calmly signaled the warriors to halt, and he raised his truce flag, and the soldiers slowed their pace. They moved up to about 150 yards of the Indians and also halted on the road. And a high wind made the flags of both sides snap in the wind. And tall Chief Wynkoop came riding out, and they surrounded him, Wynkoop said afterward, and they were expressing their delight at seeing him, and saying that now they knew everything was all right and they would not be harmed. "I conducted the principal men and met General Hancock with his officers and their staffs nearly midway between the two lines." Now Roman Nose drew up near the officers, and he sat on his horse, facing Old Man of Thunder, that's what they called General Hancock, and looked him straight in the eyes. And Hancock looked at him sharply. "Do you want peace or war?" "We do not want war," Roman Nose replied. "If we did, we would not come so close to your big guns." And he's chiding this chief. He's saying, "Why didn't you come to the council at Fort Larned?" Hancock said, "My horses are poor," Roman Nose answered, "and every man that comes to me tells me a different tale about what your intentions might be." So Tall Bull, Graybeard, Bull Bear, they had all gathered close by, and they were worried because Roman Nose was acting so calmly. Remember, Roman Nose said, "I'm going to kill this General Hancock." So Bull Bear spoke, asking the general not to bring his soldiers any nearer the Indian camp. "We have not been able to hold our women and children," he said. "They're frightened and have run away and will not come back. They fear the soldiers." "You have to get them back," Hancock ordered harshly, "and I expect you to do so." So here's Hancock ordering them what to do. He wants those women and children back. Why, you have to ask. And so when Bull Bear turned away with a gesture of frustration, Roman Nose spoke softly to him, telling him to take his chiefs back to the Indian line. "I'm going to kill Hancock," he said. And Bull Bear grabbed the bridle of Roman Nose's horse and led him aside, warning him that this would surely bring death to the whole tribe. And so the wind had increased, blowing sand and making conversation difficult, and after ordering the chiefs to start out immediately to bring back their women and children, Hancock announced that the council was now over. That's kind of where we left off last Friday. Let's see where this goes. Now, although the chiefs and the warriors obediently rode away in the direction of their women and children, the direction they'd taken, they didn't bring them back, nor did they return. Hancock waited. He was getting more pissed off by the minute as he's waiting. Then after ordering Custer to take the cavalry in pursuit of the Indians, he moved the infantry to the abandoned camp. And in a methodical manner, the lodges and their contents were inventoried, and then everything was burned. 251 teepees, 962 buffalo robes, 436 saddles, hundreds of parfleches, lariats, mats, and articles for cooking, eating, and living. The soldiers destroyed everything these Indians owned except the ponies they were riding and the blankets and clothing on their backs. This was the reprisal from Hancock for them running away rather than coming into the council. And so the frustrated rage of the Dog Soldiers and their Sioux allies at the burning of their villages exploded across the Kansas plains. They raided stage wagons, staged stations, ripped out telegraph lines, attacked railroad workers' camps, and they brought travel to a halt along the Smoky Hill Road. And the Overland, can you blame them at this point? The Overland Express issued an order to its agents. If Indians come within shooting distance, shoot them. Show them no mercy, for they'll show you none. General Hancock will protect you and our property. And the war that Hancock had come to prevent, he had now foolishly precipitated. And Custer galloped his 7th Cavalry from fort to fort, but he found no Indians. General Hancock's expedition, I regret to say, has resulted in no good, but on the contrary, has been productive of much evil, wrote the Superintendent of Indian Affairs, Thomas Murphy, to Commissioner Taylor in Washington. The operations of General Hancock, Black Whiskers Sanborn, informed the Secretary of the Interior, have been so disastrous to the public interests, and at the same time seem to me to be so inhuman, that I deem it proper to communicate my views to you on the subject. And for a mighty nation like us to be carrying on a war with a few straggling nomads under such circumstances is a spectacle most humiliating, an injustice unparalleled, a national crime most revolting, that must, sooner or later, bring down upon us or our posterity the judgment of heaven. This is what Sanborn said to the Secretary of the Interior. And now the great warrior Sherman took a different view in his report to Secretary of War Stanton. My opinion is, if 50 Indians are allowed to remain between the Arkansas and the Platte, we'll have to guard every stage station, every train, and all railroad working parties. In other words, 50 hostile Indians will checkmate 3,000 soldiers. Rather get them out as soon as possible, and it makes little difference whether they be coaxed out by Indian commissioners or killed. This was General Sherman. And if you're interested, this was part of the 40th Congress First Session Executive Documents, if you want to look up that quote. And so Sherman was persuaded by higher government authorities to try coaxing them out with a peace commission. Here we go with the peace commissions again. And so in that summer of 1867, Sherman formed the commission of Taylor, Henderson, Tappan, Sanborn, Harney, and Terry, the same group which had tried to make peace with Red Cloud at Fort Laramie later in the autumn. Now Hancock we talked about that a few days ago, last week. This was a little bit later, in the autumn of the same year. Now Hancock was recalled from the plains, and his soldiers were scattered among forts along the trails. So the new peace plan for the southern plains included not only the Cheyenne and Arapaho, but the Kiowa, the Comanche, and the Prairie Apaches. All 5 tribes would be established on one great reservation south of the Arkansas River, and the government could provide them with cattle herds and teach them how to grow crops. This is how the government was trying to coax them in. Assimilate the way we want you to assimilate. We'll give you cattle, we'll teach you how to grow crops, etc., etc., etc. So the Medicine Lodge Creek, 60 miles south of Fort Larned, was chosen as the site of a peace council. That's in Medicine Lodge. And to make certain that all important chiefs were there, the Bureau of Indian Affairs stockpiled presents at Fort Larned and set out a number of carefully chosen messengers. We're going to give them gifts to coax them in. Now, the Indians were more than willing to accept these because they needed them. But these were the things they were already told they were supposed to be getting, by the way. Now, George Bent, remember him, who was now employed as an interpreter by Tall Chief Wynkoop, was one of the emissaries. He had no difficulty in persuading Black Kettle to come in. Remember Chief Black Kettle, who flew the American flag over his lodge while the soldiers attacked and destroyed his village? He always wanted peace. Little Raven of the Arapaho and 10 Bears of the Comanche were also willing to travel to Medicine Lodge Creek for a council. But when Bent went to the Dog Soldiers' camp, he found their leaders reluctant to listen to them. The old man of the thunder had made them wary of meetings with soldier chiefs. And again, can you blame them at this point? You see this pattern happening over and over and over again. Roman Nose said flatly that he wouldn't go to Medicine Lodge Creek if the great warrior Sherman was going to be there. Not going. And Bent knew that the commissioners knew that Roman Nose was the key to any Cheyenne peace settlement. And so the warrior leader now commanded the allegiance of several hundred fighting men from all the Cheyenne societies. If Roman Nose didn't sign the treaty, it would be meaningless so far as peace in Kansas was concerned. So probably at Bent's suggestion, Edmund Guerriere was chosen to visit Roman Nose and to convince him that he should come to Medicine Lodge Creek for at least a preliminary discussion. Now, Guerriere, who had survived Sand Creek, was married to Bent's sister. Roman Nose was married to Guerriere's cousin. So with these family ties, diplomacy wasn't all that difficult. That's why he was chosen to go speak to Roman Nose. And on September 27th of 1867, Guerriere arrived at Medicine Lodge Creek with Roman Nose and Graybeard. Roman Nose had insisted that Graybeard come along as his spokesman. Graybeard understood a few words of English, could not be so easily deceived by interpreters. And the superintendent, Thomas Murphy, who was handling all the arrangements preceding the arrival of the commissioners, greeted the Cheyenne leaders warmly. He told them that the forthcoming council would be the most important one to them. And he promised that the commissioners would guarantee them provisions and take them, quote, by the hand and make a good road for peace, end quote. A dog will rush to eat provisions, Graybeard said in reply. The provisions you bring us make us sick. We can live on buffalo, but the main articles that we need, we don't see. Powder, lead, caps. When you bring these to us, we'll believe you're being sincere. So they're saying, look, we don't need your provisions. We can go hunt our buffalo. If you want to give us something, give us powder and shells and caps. Powder, lead, and caps. So Murphy replied that the United States gave presents of ammunition only to friendly Indians, and wanted to know why some of the Cheyenne were so unfriendly as to continue raiding all their outposts. Because Hancock burned our village, Roman Nose and Graybeard both replied. We're only revenging that one thing. Hancock brought this all on. Now you can find this in Donald Berthong's book, The Southern Cheyenne, from the University of Oklahoma Press. And that came out in 1963, but it's still a pertinent book on the history here. So this is what he said. We're only revenging that one thing. The fact that you destroyed our village, you destroyed our lodges, you destroyed all our buffalo blankets, you destroyed our food, all our belongings, our cookware, everything. So now Murphy assured them that the Great Father, the President of the United States, had not authorized the burning of the village. The Great Father had already removed Hancock, he said, from the plains for doing this bad thing. As for the great warrior Sherman, whose presence Roman Nose objected to, the Great Father had also recalled him to Washington. Now Roman Nose finally agreed to a compromise. He and his followers would camp 60 miles away on the Cimarron, and they would watch the council from that distance, and if it pleased them, they'd come in and they'd participate. And so it was the moon of the changing season, October 16th of 1867, when the council began in a beautiful grove of tall trees on Medicine Lodge Creek. The Arapaho, the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Prairie Apaches camped along the wooded bank alongside the council grounds. The Black Kettle chose the opposite side of the stream. In case of trouble, he would at least have the creek between him and the 200 cavalrymen who were guarding the commissioners. And Roman Nose and the Dog Soldier chiefs kept running in Black Kettle's camp to inform them of the peace talks. And these runners were as watchful of Black Kettle as they were of the commissioners. They didn't intend to permit Black Kettle to sign a bad treaty in the name of the Cheyenne people. Now, although more than 4,000 Indians were gathered at Medicine Lodge, so few Cheyenne were present that it began to almost be entirely as a Kiowa, Comanche, Arapaho affair. And this worried the commissioners, whose main objective was to secure a peace with the hostile Dog Soldiers, which were mostly Cheyenne, by convincing them that their best interests lay in the proposed reservation below the Arkansas River, where Black Kettle has been encamped now. Now, Black Kettle, Little Robe, and George Bent won over some of the reluctant chiefs, but others became so hostile they threatened to kill all of Black Kettle's horses unless he withdrew from the council. And so on October 21st, the Kiowa and the Comanche signed the treaty. They promised to share in a reservation with the Cheyenne and the Arapaho, and among other things to confine their buffalo hunting to ranges below the Arkansas and to withdraw all opposition to construction of the railroad that was being built there along the Smoky Hill route. And Black Kettle, however, wouldn't agree to sign until more Cheyenne chiefs came to Medicine Lodge. And so Little Raven and the Arapaho wouldn't sign until the Cheyennes signed. And so the frustrated commissioners agreed to wait one more week, while Black Kettle and the Little Robe went to the Dog Soldier camp to carry out their persuasive diplomacy with Roman Nose. And 5 days passed, but no Cheyenne appeared. Then late in the afternoon of October 26th, Little Robe returned from the Dog Soldier camp. The Cheyenne chiefs were coming, he said. Little Robe announced this, with about 500 warriors. They would be armed, and they would probably fire out their guns to express their desire for ammunition needed in the autumn buffalo hunts. They would harm no one, and if they received gifts of ammunition, they would sign the treaty. And so at noon the next day, under a warm autumn sun, the Cheyennes came into the camp at a gallop. Now we got to stop there for this first segment. Sit tight. After this break, we're going to be right back, find out what happens at this peace treaty.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, welcome back. Thanks for sitting on through that break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're watching and listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, and also over on my YouTube channel, where you can see the video in the simulcast form at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And of course, Odyssey Radio is ODYSY1.com. Join the lively chat room that's going on right now over on the YouTube channel. Join the conversation, throw in your 2 cents worth, and have a good time over there. So let's pick this up where we left off. They finally coaxed Roman Nose and the dog soldiers, the Cheyenne, to come in to the Peace Commission. And we ended by saying at noon the next day, under a warm autumn sun, the Cheyenne came in at a gallop. Now, as they crested a ridge south of the council grounds, they formed 4 abreast, like hard backsides cavalrymen, and several were dressed in captured army blouses, the army coats, and several others rode in red blankets. Their lances and their silver ornaments were glittering in the sunlight as the column came opposite the council grounds, and the warriors wheeled into a platoon front, facing the commissioners across the creek. One of the Cheyennes sounded a bugle call. They picked this all up from the military. And the ponies leapt forward in a charge, 500 voices shouting, "Hey-ya! Hey-ya!" And they brandished their lances, lifted their strung bows, fired a few rifles and pistols into the air, and plunged into the creek with a spray of water. Now the front ranks whipped their ponies up the bank to within a few feet of White Whiskers Harney, who stood motionless to receive them. He had to be shitting his pants, but there he stood motionless, waiting for them to cross the river. Not quite sure what they were going to do. And the other commissioners were scurrying for cover. And reining their mounts to quick halts, the chiefs and the warriors slid off, surrounded the startled commissioners, and began laughing and shaking hands. And they satisfactorily demonstrated the dash and the bravery of the young fighting Cheyenne. And so they were all pretty happy that they made the approach they made. Talk about an entrance into the Peace Commission. And there they were. So after preliminary ceremonies were out of the way, the speeches began. Tall Bull, White Horse, Bull Bear, and Buffalo Chief all spoke. They did not want war, even though these are the dog soldiers, but they did not want war. They said, but would accept it if they couldn't get an honorable peace. They wanted an honest, honorable peace with the whites. Now, Buffalo Chief made one final plea for use of the hunting grounds along the Smoky Hill River. The Cheyenne would leave the railroad alone, he promised, and then added in a voice of reason. Here he is, the voice of reason. He said, "Let us own the country together. The Cheyenne should still hunt there." But the white men of the council didn't believe in sharing any of the country north of the Arkansas. Here's their big fatal flaw in all of this. They weren't going to share. They didn't want to share the land. They wanted to move the Indians off of the land. So the next morning, after coffee was served, the Cheyenne and the Arapaho chiefs listen to a reading of the treaty, with George Bent interpreting. At first, Bull Bear and White Horse refused to sign. We're not signing that piece of crap. But Bent took them aside and convinced them it was the only way to keep their power and live with the tribe. So after the signing, the commissioners issued presents, including ammunition for hunting, and the Medicine Lodge Council was now ended, with the treaties signed by everyone. Now, most of the Cheyenne and the Arapaho would move south as they had promised, but there were others who didn't want to go, and they would not go. 300 or 400 were already heading north to the Cimarron, where their fortunes cast with a warrior who would not surrender. The name Roman Nose was not signed to the treaty. Roman Nose still refused to sign. And this, you can find this is footnoted or mentioned in the Chicago Tribune of November 4th, 1867. Douglas Jones was the author of the Treaty of Medicine Lodge, and you can find this through the Oklahoma University Press. And now, during the winter of 1867 to 68, most of the Cheyenne and the Arapaho were camped with Black Kettle down below the Arkansas River, and it was near Fort Larned. And from their autumn hunts, they had enough meat to survive the cold moons. But by springtime, the food shortage grew serious. Now, Tall Chief Wynkoop, friend of theirs, came out from the fort occasionally to distribute what scanty supplies he was able to obtain from the Indian Bureau. He told the chiefs that the great council in Washington was still arguing over the treaty. This is the the Congress. They were arguing over this treaty. They hadn't provided money to buy food and clothing for them as promised. And so the chiefs replied that if they had arms and ammunition, they could go down the Red River and kill enough buffalo to supply their people. But Wynkoop had no arms or ammunition to give them. And so as the warm spring days lengthened, the young men grew increasingly restless, grumbling because there was not enough to eat, cursing the broken promises again of the white men at Medicine Lodge. And in small bands they began drifting northward toward their old Smoky Hill hunting grounds. Tall Bull, White Horse, Bull Bear gave in to demands of their proud dog soldiers and also crossed the Arkansas. What option did they have at this point? And so along the way, some of the wild young men raided isolated settlements in hopes of finding food and guns. Now, Agent Wynkoop hastened to Black Kettle's village, begging the chiefs to be patient, keep their young men off the warpath, even though the Great Father, the president, had broken faith with them. Our white brothers are pulling away from us the hand they gave us at Medicine Lodge, Black Kettle said. But we'll try to hold to it. We hope the Great Father will take pity on us. Let us have the guns and ammunition he promised, so we can go hunt buffalo to keep our families from going hungry. Now, you can also understand the position of the United States government in this. Now, they're not looking at themselves saying, we broke this treaty, we're not keeping our word, but this is why you had groups of Indians going north to hunt. This is why they're asking for ammunition. We got to go hunt. If you can't provide the things you promised us, we can go hunt our own food. Keep the clothes, bring us ammunition and guns so we can go hunt. And the government is looking at this and saying, well, after every peace treaty, they always attack us again. Not admitting to the fact that they're the ones provoking the attacks by not keeping their word. So now Wynkoop, he was hopeful that arms and ammunition could be obtained now that the Great Father had sent out a new star chief, General Philip Sheridan. To command the soldiers in the Kansas forts. The agent arranged for several leaders, including Black Kettle and Stonecalf, to meet with Sheridan at Fort Larned. So when the Indians saw Sheridan, with his short legs and his thick neck and long swinging arms, they thought he looked like a bad-tempered bear. Now, during the council, Wynkoop asked the general if he could issue arms to the Indians. "Yes, give them arms," Sheridan growled, "and if they go to war, my soldiers will kill them like men." Stonecalf retorted, "Let your soldiers grow long hair so that we can have some honor in killing them." It was not a friendly council at all. And although Wynkoop was able to obtain a few obsolete rifles for them, the Cheyenne and the Arapaho, who remained to hunt below the Arkansas, were very uneasy. Too many of their young men and most of the dog soldier bands were still north of the river, some of them raiding and killing white men wherever they could find them. And by late August, most of the Cheyenne in the north were gathering along the Erie River fork of the Erie River fork of the Republican River. And Tall Bull and White Horse and Roman Nose were there with about 300 warriors and all of their families. And a few Arapaho and Pawnee Killers Sioux were camped nearby. From Bull Bear, who was camped with his band on the Solomon, they heard that General Sheridan had organized a company of scouts to hunt down Indian camps. But these Indians were too busy gathering meat for winter to worry about scouts or soldiers finding them. And then one day, in the moon when the deer paw the earth, September 16th, a hunting party of Sioux from Pawnee Killer's camp saw about 50 white men going into camp on the Erie, about 20 miles below the Indian camps. Only 3 or 4 of the white men wore blue uniforms, and the others were dressed in rough frontier clothing, and this was the special company that was organized by Sheridan to search out the Indian camps. They were known as Forsyth's Scouts. So, as soon as the Sioux hunters alerted their people, Pawnee Killer sent runners to the Cheyenne camp to ask them to join in an attack on the white scouts who had invaded their hunting grounds. Now, Tall Bull and White Horse immediately sent criers through their camp, urging the warriors to make ready their war rigs and put on their battle paint. Then they went to see Roman Nose, who was in his teepee undergoing purification ceremonies. Remember, Roman Nose was this chief who was almost a fanatic is not the word, a purist when it came to his purification rituals and to his religion, his spirituality, and almost to an extreme. They say many times he was late to things, late to battle, late to council, because he was going through his ritual ceremonies. And by the way, a few days before, when the Cheyenne had gone to feast with the Sioux, one of the Sioux women had used an iron fork to cook fried bread, and Roman Nose didn't discover this until after he'd eaten the bread. And any metal touching his food was against his personal medicine. And so Roman Nose's magic power to escape the white man's bullets was worthless until he had completed the purification ceremonies. And so the Cheyenne chiefs accepted this belief as a matter of course. But Tall Bull told Roman Nose to hurry up the ceremonies to restore his medicine. Tall Bull was sure the Cheyenne and the Sioux together could destroy 50 white scouts. But there might be companies of bluecoats nearby, and if so, the Indians would soon need Roman Nose to lead them in charges. And Roman Nose told them to go ahead, and when he was ready, he would come. Because of the long distance to the soldiers' scouts' camp, the chiefs decided to wait until the next daylight to attack. Now, riding their best war ponies and armed with their best lances, their bows, their rifles, 500 or 600 warriors moved down the Erie River Valley. And the Sioux wore their eagle feather bonnets, the Cheyenne wore their crow feather bonnets, and not far from the scouts' camp they halted. Remember, there's 50 of these scouts, 400 or 500 of these Cheyenne and Arapaho. Now, not far from the scouts' camp, they stopped. The chiefs issued strict orders that no small parties should go out and attack alone. They should all attack together, as Roman Nose had taught them. They would ride over the scouts and rub them out. Now, in spite of the warnings, 6 Sioux and 2 Cheyenne, all very young men, slipped out before sunrise and tried to capture the white men's horse herd. They charged in just at dawn, yelling and waving blankets to stampede the stock. A few animals were captured, but the young braves had alerted Forsyth's scouts to the presence of Indians. And so before the main body of the Sioux and Cheyenne could charge that exposed little camp, the scouts had time to move to a small island in the dry bed of the Aracree and there take cover among the willow brush and the high grass. And so across the misted valley, the Indians charged in a broad front, their ponies' hooves drumming on the earth, and when they were close enough to see the scouts hurrying to the bushy island, one of the Cheyenne warriors sounded a blast on a bugle. They had intended to overrun the camp. Now they had to swerve into the dry stream bed. And so a burst of fire from the scouts' Spencer repeating rifles raked the first ranks, and the charging warriors divided. Some to the left, some to the right, and thus they swept around this little island in the dry creek bed. And for most of the morning, the Indians circled the island. The only targets were the scouts' horses standing in the high grass. As the warriors shot the animals down, the scouts used them for breastworks. Now keep in mind, the attack of the Indians, they were not an organized army. And you had these scouts going out trying to get horses. And that's what really screwed up the whole attack. They wanted to take them by surprise in their camp. And so a few more warriors made individual charges on the island, dismounting, trying to creep up on the scouts through the brush, but the quick rifle fire was too strong for them. A Cheyenne named Wolf Belly made 2 mounted charges right through the defense ring of the scouts. And he was wearing his magic panther skin, and it gave him such strong medicine that not a single bullet touched him. Early in the afternoon, and by the way, you got to say something for the Native American spirituality, the medicine. There were many of these warriors that seemed awfully protected from getting shot down because they did the medicine. Now, early in the afternoon, Roman Nose arrived on the field, and he took a position on the high ground overlooking the island. Most of the warriors stopped fighting and waited to see what Roman Nose would do. Tall Bull and White Horse went to talk with him, but didn't ask him to lead in the battle. Then an old man, White Contrary, came by and said, "Here is Roman Nose, the man we depend on, sitting behind this hill." Roman Nose laughed. He had already made up his mind that he was going to do what he was going to do that day, and he knew he was probably going to die. But he laughed at what the old man said. "All those people fighting out there feel they belong to you," White Contrary went on, "and they will all do what you tell them, and here you are behind this hill." Now, by the way, that quote is a matter of record. You can find that in Grinnell's book. And Roman Nose went off to one side and prepared himself for battle, painting his forehead yellow, his nose red, his chin black. Then he put on his single-horned war bonnet with the 40 feathers in its tail. And when he was ready, he mounted, and he rode down to the dry riverbed where the warriors were waiting in formation for him to lead them in a victorious charge. They started out in a slow trot, increased speed to a gallop, then lashed their ponies without mercy so that nothing could stop them from riding over the island. But once again, the firepower of Forsyth's scouts cut down the front ranks, reducing the force of the desperate charge. Roman Nose reached the outer fringes of the willows, then Crossfire caught him above the hips, a bullet penetrating his spine. He fell into the bush, laying there until dusk. When he managed to crawl to the bank, some young warriors were there searching for him. They carried him up to the high ground, where Cheyenne and Sioux women had come to take care of the wounded, and during the night, Roman Nose died. Now, for the young Cheyenne warriors, the death of Roman Nose was like a great light going out in the sky. He had believed and made them believe that if they would fight for their own country, as Red Cloud was doing, that they would someday win. Now, neither the Cheyenne nor the Sioux had any taste for more fighting, but they kept Forsyth's scouts besieged there in the brush and the sand for 8 days. The scouts had to eat their dead horses and dig in the sand for water. And on the 8th day, when a relief column of soldiers came, the Indians were ready to leave the stench of the island. The white men made much of this fight. They called it the Battle of Beecher's Island, after the young Lieutenant Frederick Beecher, who was killed there. And the survivors boasted that they had killed hundreds of redskins. And although the Indians could count no more than 30, the loss of Roman Nose was incalculable. And they'd always remember it was the fight when Roman Nose was killed. So after they'd rested from the siege, a considerable number of Cheyenne started moving south. With soldiers hunting everywhere for them now, their only hope of survival lay with their relatives below the Arkansas River. And they looked upon Black Kettle as a beaten old man, but he was still alive, and he was still chief of the Southern Cheyenne. They had no way of knowing, of course, that Soldier Chief, who looked like an angry bear, Sheridan, was planning a winter campaign below the Arkansas. And when the snows of the cold moons came, he would send Custer and his pony soldiers to destroy the villages of the savage Indians, most of whom had kept their treaty obligations. To Sheridan, any Indian who resisted when fired upon was a savage. Now, during that autumn, Black Kettle established a village on the Washita River, 40 miles east of the Antelope Hills. And as the young men drifted back from Kansas, he scolded them for their errant ways, but like a forgiving father accepted them back into his band. In November, when he heard rumors of soldiers coming, he and Little Robe and 2 Arapaho leaders made a journey of almost 100 miles down the valley of the Washita to Fort Cobb, and the headquarters for the new agency south of the Arkansas. Now, General William B. Hazen was commander of the fort, and on their summer visits, the Cheyenne and the Arapaho had found him to be friendly and sympathetic. On this urgent occasion, however, Hazen was not at all cordial. When Black Kettle asked for permission to move his 180 lodges near Fort Cobb for protection, Hazen refused to grant it. He also refused permission for the Cheyenne and the Arapaho to join the Kiowa and the Comanche villages. He assured Black Kettle that if his delegation would return to their villages, keep their young men there, they would not be attacked. Now, hadn't he heard this before, Black Kettle? Keep this flag flying over your lodge, and you'll be safe. You will not be attacked. So after issuing his visitors some sugar, some coffee, and tobacco, Hazen sent them away, knowing that he'd probably never see any of them ever again. He was fully aware of Sheridan's war plans for that winter. Now, facing into a raw north, and so he's aware of Sheridan's war plans for the winter, but he sends them back, telling them they'll be okay and they'll be safe. So, facing into a raw north wind that turned into a snowstorm, the disappointed chiefs made their way back to their villages, and they arrived on the night of November 26th. Weary as he was from the long journey, Black Kettle immediately called a council of the tribe's leaders. George Bent wasn't there. He had taken his wife, Black Kettle's niece, on a visit to William Bent's ranch in Colorado. Now, at this time, Black Kettle told his people they must not be caught by surprise as they had been at Sand Creek. Instead of waiting for the soldiers to come to them, he would take a delegation to meet the soldiers and convince them that the Cheyenne village was peaceful. Snow was deep and still falling, but as soon as the clouds left the sky, they would start to meet the soldiers. Although Black Kettle went to bed late that night, he awoke just before dawn, as he always did. He stepped outside his lodge and was glad to see that the skies were clearing. A heavy fog blanketed the valley of the Washita, but he could see deep snow on the ridges across the river. Suddenly, he heard a woman crying. Her voice became clearer as she came closer. "Soldiers!" She was yelling, "Soldiers!" She was shouting. Reacting automatically, Black Kettle rushed inside his lodge for a rifle, and in a few seconds that passed before he was outside again, he had made up his mind what he must do: arouse the camp and put everyone to flight. There must not be another Sand Creek. He would meet the soldiers alone at the Washita Ford and parley with them. Pointing his rifle skyward, he pulled the trigger. The report brought the village wide awake. As he shouted commands to everyone to mount and ride away, his wife untied his pony and brought it to him. He was preparing to hurry toward the ford when a bugle blared out of the fog, followed by shouted commands and wild yells of charging soldiers. Because of the snow, there was no thunder of hoofbeats, only the rattle of packs and a jingle of harness metal. A horse yelling, like cough, H-O-A-R-S-E, not a horse. A horse yelling, the bugles blowing everywhere. Custer had brought his military band through the snow and had ordered them to play Garry Owen for the charge. Now, Black Kettle expected the soldiers to come riding across the Washita Ford. By the way, Garry Owen. This is what this sounds like. Let's see if I can find it for you here. Let's go over to YouTube and just... I think this is it. This might be from a movie. After we get through the ad. There's an ad that's always got to play on YouTube. Here we go. Here's Garry Owen. This is Errol Flynn is playing Custer.
Become quite a belly Yankee, sir. Rode behind you at Hanover. Rather fancied
Let's find it.
Hearts so stout have got a fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Where'er we go, they dread the name of Garry Owen in glory.
You've heard this before. Here it is as they're gathering their troops. Now, that there was Garry Owen. That's what they were playing on the bugles as they came charging over the hill, through the snow, and toward this Indian camp. And so, Garry Owen was leading the charge. You've heard it. The Black Kettle expected the soldiers to come riding across the Washita Ford, but instead they were dashing out of the fog from 4 directions surrounding the camp. How could he meet 4 charging columns and talk to them of peace? It was Sand Creek all over again. He reached for his wife's hand, lifted her up behind him onto his horse, and lashed the pony into a quick motion. She had survived Sand Creek with him. Now, like tortured dreamers, dreaming the same nightmare over again, they were fleeing away again from screaming bullets. And we have to stop there for tonight. We'll conclude this tomorrow. This is what was happening in 1867 in Kansas. So, folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again tomorrow night.